China already has one of the world's largest air forces, yet Beijing is rapidly replacing older fighters with a growing fleet of fifth-generation stealth aircraft. And this raises a much bigger question. Is China simply modernizing its air force? Or is it preparing for a future where large numbers of stealth fighters could challenge American air power across the Indo-Pacific? The answer becomes much clearer when we look at what the J-20 is actually designed to do. The J-20 is not simply China's answer to the F-22 or F-35. It is part of a much larger Chinese strategy built around long-range air combat, stealth, sensors, electronic warfare, and the ability to attack high-value targets from a considerable distance. And China appears to believe that having a large number of these aircraft could be just as important as making the aircraft itself more advanced. First, look at how quickly production has changed. When the J-20 first entered service, production was relatively limited. But that situation has changed dramatically. RUSI estimated that China was producing only around 20 J-20s per year in 2020. By late 2025, its estimate had increased to roughly 120 J-20A and J-20S aircraft per year. Open-source assessments in 2026 suggest that around 500 J-20S may already have been delivered. That means China has moved the J-20 from an experimental and relatively scarce capability towards something much closer to a mass-fielded weapon system. And that is the first major reason China wants so many of them. Numbers change the strategic equation. A small fleet of stealth fighters can perform specialized missions. A large fleet can begin changing how an opponent has to plan an entire war. So, what would China do with hundreds of J-20s? One of the most important missions could be counter-air operations. The J-20's combination of low observability, advanced sensors, and long-range air-to-air weapons gives China a platform designed to threaten aircraft before traditional fighter-versus-fighter combat even begins. That doesn't necessarily mean the J-20 would fly into a close-range dogfight with American fighters. Instead, China's concept appears much more focused on detecting, tracking, and engaging important targets at a distance. And those targets aren't necessarily enemy fighters. Think about American and Allied airborne early warning aircraft, tankers, intelligence platforms, and other high-value support aircraft. These aircraft are extremely important because they help fighters see farther, stay airborne longer, and coordinate the battle space. If a large J-20 force can threaten those support aircraft, it could force American and Allied aircraft to operate farther away from the contested area. And that creates another problem. Range. The Western Pacific is not a small battlefield. Distances between bases, carrier groups, and potential combat zones are enormous. China's geography gives the People's Liberation Army access to a large network of land-based airfields, while the J-20 itself is a relatively large twin-engine fighter designed with long-range operations in mind. That makes the aircraft particularly relevant to a conflict around Taiwan or the broader Western Pacific. But there is another reason China needs large numbers. Stealth works best when it is connected to a larger network. A J-20 does not have to operate alone. It can potentially receive information from ground-based radar systems, airborne early warning aircraft, satellites, naval forces, and other combat aircraft. This means the real weapon is not simply the J-20. The weapon is the network surrounding the J-20. And this is where China's investment becomes particularly interesting. China is simultaneously expanding its advanced fighter fleet, airborne early warning capabilities, electronic warfare aircraft, long-range missiles, and unmanned systems. RUSI's assessment highlights the rapid growth of China's advanced fourth and fifth-generation combat aircraft and projects that the PLA Air Force could potentially have around 1,000 J-20A and S aircraft by 2030 if current trends continue. That number should be treated as a projection, not a confirmed Chinese target. But even the possibility of such a fleet explains why Washington and its allies are paying close attention. And the J-20 itself is not standing still. The original J-20 has been progressively upgraded. The newer J-20A incorporates changes to the airframe, avionics, and engines. Most importantly, China has been working to bring the indigenous WS-15 engine into the aircraft. Recent reporting and imagery indicate that the upgraded J-20A is associated with the WS-15, potentially giving the aircraft greater thrust, improved performance, and additional power for onboard systems. That matters because China is no longer simply producing more copies of the original aircraft. It is attempting to produce better versions at the same time it increases production. This is a crucial distinction. Now comes the American comparison. The United States still has major advantages. The F-35 fleet is vastly larger globally, has extensive combat experience, and operates through a huge network of American and Allied bases. Lockheed Martin reported that almost 1,300 F-35s were already in the global fleet at the beginning of 2026, after delivering 191 aircraft during 2025 alone. And the United States also operates the F-22 Raptor, while continuing to develop its next-generation air combat systems. So this is not a simple situation where China is suddenly producing more stealth fighters than America. The United States still possesses enormous advantages in combat experience, global basing, allied integration, logistics, and overall military aviation infrastructure. But China is attacking one particular advantage: the numerical and geographic advantage in the Western Pacific. Imagine a future crisis where China can deploy hundreds of advanced stealth fighters from multiple air bases, while American forces must operate across enormous distances. In that environment, even if an individual American fighter has important technological advantages, the total number of aircraft available, their missile loadouts, their supporting sensors, and their proximity to the battlefield all become critical. And this is where quantity becomes a form of quality. There is another important factor: missiles. A stealth fighter is only as dangerous as the weapons and information available to it. The J-20 is associated with China's long-range PL-15 and also PL-17 air-to-air missiles, while newer configurations are being developed to improve weapons carriage. China has also demonstrated efforts to increase the number of air-to-air missiles the aircraft can carry while retaining a low observable configuration. This creates the possibility of a very different air battle. Instead of hundreds of fourth-generation fighters fighting at visual range, imagine large numbers of stealth aircraft attempting to detect each other at long distances while using off-board sensors and long-range missiles. In that environment, simply having more stealth aircraft available could become extremely valuable. And China isn't betting everything on the J-20. This may actually be the most important part of the story. The J-20 is becoming the heavyweight component of a much broader Chinese combat air system. China is also developing the smaller J-35 family, advanced J-16 electronic warfare aircraft, improved J-10 variants, unmanned combat aircraft, and next-generation fighter concepts. RUSI notes that China is already moving toward fielding the J-35 alongside the J-20, creating the potential for different classes of fifth-generation aircraft to perform complementary missions. So, the future Chinese Air Force may not be built around one super fighter. It could be built around large numbers of different platforms operating together. J-20s could hunt high-value targets and conduct long-range counter-air missions. J-35s could provide a more numerous stealth fighter component. J-16s and electronic warfare aircraft could support the force. Airborne early warning aircraft could extend the sensor network. And unmanned aircraft could eventually act as additional sensors, decoys, or weapons carriers. That is a much bigger challenge than simply counting J-20s. So, what could change in the next 5 to 10 years? The biggest change may be psychological as much as technological. For decades, American air power has operated under the assumption that highly capable stealth aircraft would be relatively difficult for an opponent to field in large numbers. China is challenging that assumption. If Chinese production continues at anything close to current estimates, the J-20 could become one of the world's largest fleets of operational fifth-generation fighters. And once that happens, American planners cannot treat the J-20 as a limited elite capability. They have to plan around the possibility of encountering large formations of stealth aircraft supported by long-range missiles, electronic warfare, airborne sensors, and an enormous network of land-based systems that could force American and Allied forces to disperse aircraft, increase tanker and sensor protection, develop longer-range weapons, expand unmanned combat aircraft programs, and invest even more heavily in counter-stealth detection. In other words, China's J-20 production is not necessarily about creating a fighter that is individually better than the F-35 or F-22. It is about creating a large, increasingly sophisticated force that can make the Western Pacific far more difficult and expensive for an adversary to operate in. And that may be the real reason China is building so many. Because in a future high-end conflict, the decisive question may not be, which country has the best stealth fighter? It may be, which side can put the largest number of connected, survivable, and combat-ready aircraft into the right part of the sky, and keep them there. And if China's J-20 production continues to accelerate, that question could become much more important before the end of this decade.